Good evening, everyone. Please join me in welcoming Ross Mackay, a 29-year-old Toastmaster who has inspired me personally when he was part of 3 districts or more. He has also inspired audiences in 34 countries across the world. Ross placed 3rd in the World Championship of Public Speaking and is the only member of District 123 to receive the prestigious Accredited Speaker Award. Ross has served as the District 60 Governor in 2012 and 2013. Ross is on the Board of Directors, was on the Board of Directors in 2014 and 2016. Last year, Ross received the prestigious Presidential Citation for his service to Toastmasters International. With all his achievements, Ross believes that his most important claims to fame are that he is the youngest and best-looking grandfather in his family. Ross has been married to the same beautiful woman for more years than he's allowed to mention in public. In this presentation, Ross will discuss various leadership styles and the basic keys to leadership excellence in order to help you discover your own leadership legacy. Please welcome the President of Towns of York Toastmasters Club, distinguished Toastmaster, and accredited speaker and past international director, and my very good friend, Ross Mackay. Ross.
Thank you, Iona. Thank you, and welcome everybody. This is going to be an interesting evening. We're going to have some fun with this, but at the same time, we're going to speak rather seriously tonight about an important function, and that is basically leadership. Most of us join Toastmasters to learn how to communicate better, but many are now joining to learn how to become good leaders. And some are still working at it, yours and truly especially. We're going to get there. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Here is some information that I thought you would be interested in. This is some of the 50 great world leaders that were showing up in one of the major magazines, the name of which escapes me for the moment, but it was out there for a while. And it has shown as a variety of people from Pope Francis to Bono and everybody in between. Not that I mean there were different edges of the galaxy, but there we are. Speaking of galaxy, we've got Jeff Bezos there, who was smart enough to take Captain Kirk back into the stratosphere again, at least for the first time, and gave him a very emotional journey. I don't know how many of you saw that, but that was a leadership thing that really kind of came back to him. And all these other leadership, there were already extraordinary achievers in business and the arts, and in many other cases. Ordinary citizens where they just had the opportunity to, in unprecedented times, some of them, to step up to make the world just a little better place, and inspired others to do exactly the same. So I hope we'll be able to look at that and see where we're going. Let's take another group of leaders. Our international president, Margaret Page, with our president-elect, Matt Kinsey, and Morag Matheson, our first vice president, with Roddy Spear, our second vice president. Richard Peck, as you all know, is the immediate past president. And that is Dan Rex, who's along with him. Dan is a man who joined Toastmasters just a few years after I did, and has done some wonderful work with them. He's a pleasure to work with. And that is a man who, in my opinion, has really earned the title leader. So I'm delighted he's here. And here's a few other leaders that you may know a little better. Chris, of course, is our district director. Iona, you know, who introduced me so well, and Leslie is hanging around with us this evening. So I'm delighted to have both of you and our 8 very talented and gifted division directors who are working with us. So that's a bunch of good leaders. But what is a leader? If you go into Mr. Google, you will find something, believe it or not, in the region of 1.4 billion responses to that single question. Oh, the capability of technology today, I don't know about it. But here's my favorite. My favorite definition is a leader who influences a group of people towards a specific result. And the key word for me, at least in that definition, is the word influences. The capacity to affect the development of something, not to drive it, not to manage it, not to direct it, not to lead it, not to command or control it, but to influence it. Here's another definition that I think is rather appropriate. I think Margaret Thatcher nailed it with this one. Being a leader is like being a lady. If you have to go around telling people you are one, you ain't. For those of you who don't know Margaret Thatcher, she is a past Prime Minister of the UK and a very smart lady in her own right at the time. But what is leadership? I like Warren Bennis's definition when he says leadership is like beauty. It's hard to define, but you know it when you see it. But perhaps a little more appropriate definition would be something like leadership is the intentional influence in support of a common goal. And there's that word influence again. Not manager leading, but influencing. But let's never forget that one of the most confusing situations that occurs is when management is confused with leadership. Peter Drucker clarified it very well when he said that management is doing things right, while leadership is doing the right things. So its leadership is the intentional influence and support of a common goal. So let's talk about that common goal. To provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills. This is the goal of every Toastmaster club all over the world, and consequently, the role, or the goal rather, of every single member. However, if you happen to be a district leader, you've got another one, and that is to build new clubs and support all clubs in achieving excellence. And if you look at that very succinct goal statement, it becomes obvious the club growth director handles the first part, program quality director focuses on the second part, and the district director oversees and supports the whole thing. But regardless of whether or not your goal is related to Toastmasters or a more personal and or business related goal, I believe it's still necessary to have goals. And many of you have heard my goal achievement program that I've been developed and have presented many times over the years. Let's talk about a little bit about the barriers to leadership. The lack of personal goals might just be moving towards that. But the barriers tend to be things like apathy, sitting back, very complacent, not really interested, happy where I am. Maybe some anxiety, could be fear of success, or who knows, fear of failure. And many of us have gone through that, or simply fear of change. There's a little thing I saw quite recently that says, who wants change? And everybody puts their hands up. And the other one says, who wants to change? And nobody put their hand up. It was a slightly different, subtle one that went through. And of course, our ego, our own idea of who we are. Are we good enough? Do we have an inferiority complex or maybe a superiority complex? But it all can affect your decision to go ahead and become a leader. So let's talk about the goal of an effective leader, to achieve the desired results. Now, I hope it's obvious that that doesn't mean you do all the work yourself. But your job is to make sure your team has the skills, knowledge, and equipment to succeed with the various functions that bring about the desired result. And sometimes that might mean helping the team members to do their job when things get a little difficult. Which of course brings us to the big question. How do we do that? How do we become a leader? What is it we do? Well, I believe there's a number of ways we can do that, or 4 leadership styles. The first one is, of course, the autocratic leader. This is a guy that says, do what I tell you. Now, this one works well when attention to detail is absolutely required. You see it, I certainly grew up with it in the manufacturing sector, in construction, and of course in military. That's what it is. This is really needed where heavy oversight is necessary, such as where the staff may be inexperienced or frankly unskilled. And it can, unfortunately, or has to be used where there's little margin for error. But with the total authority and control, it can lead to resentment and a strained morale, and results in sometimes difficulty motivating and sadly retaining team members. Frequently referred to as management, or in extreme cases, dictatorship. Charismatic leaders. This is the one that says, okay, follow me, boys. As we're diving in, it would take a charismatic leader to get me to dive into that lot, I can promise you that, but that's a whole different issue. But the type of leadership that, in this one, this charismatic leadership, requires excellent communication skills and the ability to motivate and inspire your team, inspire them with a vision. And this one becomes hugely difficult if one or more of your team simply decides they're not going to follow your lead, right? Obviously, this doesn't happen frequently in corporate situations, but it does in many other areas. Charismatic leaders also require some detailed support. Many of them are great at seeing the big picture, but when it comes to detail, they may be just a little bit slow getting off the mark, or maybe not as much or able to handle that. So that's something to be aware of there. Democratic leadership. What do you think? This usually takes time to build a consensus which will motivate the team. So progress is frequently quite slow at getting to a decision on this. This is one where you have to build consensus, or try and build consensus with all the members. It's essential here. With teamwork, and frequently gives some great results. This style makes me think every time I talk about a wonderful year I had as what we now call Club Growth Director, where Fern Parker was the Program Quality Director and Randy Jacobs was District Governor. The 3 of us worked very, very closely together. We were together on a regular basis, either over coffee or lunch or breakfast sometimes, and we kicked around ideas all the time. We frequently disagreed, but we found solutions, not necessarily unanimous conclusions or solutions, but it truly was a joy working with Fern and Randy, and that works. And that's something, by the way, that I have witnessed it in my own history, not just in Toastmasters, but in other areas of my life. When you're working with a team, there's a real joy that will come into being if, in fact, the team is working. If it's not working, then, of course, there's not much joy in there at all. The other leadership style is the servant leadership. This gets a lot of lip service. And this is team decision-making at its utmost. It needs highly skilled and experienced team members. The leader agrees to whatever decision the team makes. And by the way, so does every other member of the team. And that's the whole point about servant leadership. It doesn't work that well in competitive situations. And the truth of the matter in servant leadership often happens by accident or even omission, where there's no management authority or leadership of any other kind. So these are the four basic ones. So the question arises, which one do I use? Is it an autocratic, charismatic, democratic, or a servant leadership? So it depends what you're doing, doesn't it? But the truth of the matter is, if you're looking to see which one you use or should use, all of them at varying degrees and at different times, depending on the situation. Does that make sense? You know, that's what it is. You see, the key for all this, for your leadership legacy, is to know, for you to know, the skill for you to know which style to invoke in the various circumstances with which you're faced. This is the supreme leadership skill in my book. Which one do I have to be for this particular situation I'm in right now? And that's a tricky one, because all of us, I think, to one degree or another, every individual will lean towards one of the four almost all the time. And sometimes it's difficult to say, well, no, you know, I may want to really tell them what to do and get them to do it, but that ain't going to work here. I'm going to have to back off a little bit and work in a more democratic way, or simply as a servant leader. So it's very tricky to do that. And there are a number of items that I think will help you figure out how to use each and every one of these skills. These keys, or the keys of leadership, as I call them. They're regardless of which leadership style you decide to follow. These 5 keys, I believe, are essential to all of them. The first one, integrity. And I stumbled across this quotation from our dear friend Don Frail: "Trust is the new leadership currency." And I went, wow, isn't that true? All right. But what is integrity in a leadership role? A team will only follow a leader they can trust, doing the right things for the right reasons. There's an old friend of mine in the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers, Tom Stoyan, who is Canada's sales coach. And one of Tom's original comments that I heard for years is that the only thing we have to sell is trust. If the people we're trying to sell things to, whether it be ideas or equipment, doesn't matter. The only thing we have to sell is trust. And of course, trust is a two-way street. As a team must be able to trust their leader, so too must the leader be able to trust the team members. And as far as the leader is concerned, I think with the integrity aspect here, we have to remember that it's always important to take the blame, but give the credit. So that's something that you would work with in the aspect of working with your team with integrity. Some years ago, we had a wonderful keynote speaker at one of the international conventions by the name of Jim Kouzes. And Jim's quoted this, and I remember that when he said it, I wrote it down instantly because I thought it was one of these obvious things that is never really obvious. But when you have that phrase, when the vision is clear, decisions are easy. So what is your vision? Where are you going? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but if no one knows where you're going, they ain't going to follow you. Right? It just doesn't happen. But not only have you got to have a vision, your team must know about it. And they must know you're serious about it. Right? You must be able to express that vision with clarity. So that and not just be clear about it, but let people understand that you are passionate about that vision and you're committed to obtain a if you want to get a buy-in from the team at all, you're committed to that vision. I was quite astounded a number of years ago. Some of you may remember when I was district governor of District 60, I had a little rap that I used. And I brought that out more for a little bit of fun more than anything else, never realizing at the time just how much it created and helped identify a vision for the district team. So let me tell you all the story of a man with a vision who went to California with a whale of a mission to make communication a worldwide fact. Then later on, we added on a later track, 5 verses of it with a chorus that went 5, 5, 50, that's 60, 5, 5, 50, in 60, 5, 5, 50, R60, Toastmasters, where leaders are made. I was astounded at what an impact that simple little poem had. My kids always tease me about it. At least one of them did. She said, "You're getting lazy, Dad. Years earlier, you'd have put a tune to it and sung it." But maybe I am. No, that couldn't possibly be rap music. No, we'll leave that alone. But vision, when the vision is clear, decisions are easy. The third clear key is communication. And of course, what factors make up communication? Speaking, writing, listening, providing feedback, all of them. But the biggest problem, has communication taken place? And that's the biggest problem with communication. It's the illusion that it has taken place. And that's a difficult one. I told him already what to do about that. Yeah, maybe you did. But did he hear you? And is you acting on it? How do we know it's taken place? Who makes communication happen? The sender or the recipient? Well, the truth of the matter is, whether we like it or not, it's the sender's responsibility to make sure that the message gets across. And that is a killer with communication. Very, very important. Decisiveness. I love this quote from Teddy Roosevelt. In any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. Now, decisiveness does not mean stubborn. Although some folks, you would think, believe that's really what it means. But what do you need to know to make a good decision? Is the advice you're getting sound? Is what you know about the question, is that sound? Are you hearing both sides of an argument? Oh, well, most people say this. How many constitute most? All 3 of the people you've talked to? Or what is most? You see, it simply means, the size of this simply means, can you make a decision when it's necessary? Not everyone can. Many are afraid of decision making. Sadly, I had a PQD back in the days who couldn't make a decision if you paid her serious money. It was always, well, we'll think about it, we'll do it. It never did happen. Somebody said the only man who never makes a mistake is the man who never does anything. I'm sure that was Teddy Roosevelt that came up with that one as well at one point. But leaders will decide to do something that turns out to be a mistake. Leaders make mistakes. It happens. Get over it. The good leader, of course, will, when they recognize it's been a mistake, they will acknowledge it, apologize, and move on and rectify. That's what it is. Decisiveness. It's a vital part of the whole thing. Teamwork. This classic quotation from Helen Keller. Alone, we can do so little. Together, we can do so much. Teamwork is probably the single biggest challenge that we have in Toastmasters. People who will not work together. They don't understand how much we can learn from working together. How much fun, frankly, it can be to work in a productive team, such as I mentioned earlier with Randy and with Fern. And when you have that situation, what a joy you can find in finding a compromise. Some suggest that compromise is a failure. Compromise is an achievement. All right. Some of you may know a fellow by the name of Karim Premji. Karim, are you on the call by any chance? Oh, good. That means I can speak about him then. That's fine. Good. There are no two more different people in the world than Ross Mackay and Karim Premji. We start from different places. We understand different things. I look at the big picture while Karim looks at the punctuation. Well, I'm exaggerating, it's not that bad. But the truth of the matter is we are so different. And we have worked together in a number of different projects over the years. And it's always a knock them down, drag them out discussions that we have about what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, where we're going to go, how we're going to get there. And it's all there. And this consequence, and it usually takes a long time for us to finally get it together and bring that together. We disagree about almost everything. But at the end of the discussion and the meetings, we usually finish up with a great solution, one we are both happy with. And we had fun in the process, believe it or not. We're good friends, but when we work together, oh man, you could see it coming, it's going to happen. And it does every time. But we are close friends and have been for a long time. Teamwork. It's kind of different. It's kind of special. I want to share with you an analogy about teamwork that I learned during my very early years. Ballroom dancing. Now, I don't know how many people still ballroom dance. Certainly nowhere near as many as. Hello, was that somebody just blew? Yeah. Getting exasperated with ballroom dancing. All right, but whatever that was, the teamwork that goes into ballroom dancing is kind of fun. But when I was growing up, you didn't go to a bar to meet other people. The bar's closed in Glasgow, Scotland, at 9 o'clock in the evening anyway, so that wasn't working. The ballrooms, however, were open till 1 o'clock in the morning. 12 midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. And in the city of Glasgow, there was about 12 or 14 very, very large dance halls or ballrooms where you could go dancing. That's a lot, that's a lot. And parents used to, as kids, we all learned at home from our parents how to dance. We learned the steps. I remember watching my kid sister standing on my dad's feet as he taught her the steps of ballroom dancing. And my mom taught me as well. So you got to know the basic steps. Then you went to the ballroom and you met a stranger and you had to make sure or try to get the steps right. And of course, a lot of the time you didn't make it very well initially anyway. And of course, if you look at the shoes that the ladies wear as opposed to the shoes the men wear, there was a lot of toe injuries on behalf of the ladies. It was a rough time. But the truth of the matter is, when you were learning, it was generally accepted that the man led while the lady followed his lead in ballroom dancing. And that caused a lot of bruised toes. But the trick is that that's how it worked together. Everybody understood that. But once you got to know each other, as Margaret and I met at a dance hall in Glasgow, and we dated for years, and we used to go dancing frequently. And we became pretty good at dancing together. She knew where I was going to go. She understood my leadership ideas and how I sing to her as to what was going on, and she got it. But if you keep on doing that and you become a really, really good dancer and you understand what's going on, something like this just might happen to you. You might find yourself on the floor that something like this would happen. Now, for those of you who have seen ballroom dancing at its best, you know that the man is not leading his partner. She knows exactly what's going to happen. And she knows where they're going to move and how they're going to move. And she is doing something a little different than he is. And what that little difference is, something that enhances and adds to what they're doing. And they're working together to make it happen. They're working together as a team to produce the final performance. In other words, they're working together to achieve their goals together. Leadership is only needed until teamwork happens. Teamwork can't happen at all unless both parties work together, unless all the members of the teams work together. And that's kind of a tricky way to do it. Can the goal be achieved? It depends how big the goal is. And those of you who know me, I've heard me say more than once, if the goal isn't big enough to scare you just a little bit, then it's not big enough. So your leadership is needed until teamwork happens. So the trick is to get to the point, if you can, not when there's just two of you, when there's three of you, with Fern and Randy and I, when you get together, and I've watched teams, I've been part of teams where there's been 5 or 6. In fact, I've been part of teams where there's been 20 odd people in the room, in the National Board of Directors, the International Board of Directors of Toastmasters. I watch that and I see opinions coming, flying all over the place. But eventually we're coming together to create a single outcome, to get a single result. And it can't happen unless we're all working together to contribute to where we're going. And that's a vital part of it, the whole thing. So the question is, what is your leadership legacy going to look like? You see, regardless of what goal you're striving for, whether it's in Toastmasters or in your career, or even at home, the likelihood is you're not working towards it alone. I mean, if there's any people in a marriage in this room, then you know how that works. If you don't ask me, because you know it's going to be one of these situations. I'm going to have to call Margaret and ask her how it works. But the truth is that neither one of us leads all the time. Some of us have got some ideas and the others jump in beside it. And that's what teamwork is. So what is your favorite leadership legacy? What is your leadership legacy going to look like? What one will you choose? Because you see, the decision is yours. You can make the decision. And don't tell me that, oh, the other guy isn't cooperating. I know. Sometimes the other guy never does cooperate, right? But you have to get there anyway. You see, that's what a leader does, even if there's no cooperation. And frequently there is no cooperation. So if there's no cooperation, what do? You do the best you can. So which one will you choose as your legacy? The autocratic leadership, the charismatic leadership, the democratic leadership, servant leadership, always very popular. Or will it truly evolve into a teamwork? I wonder, where are we going? You know, one of the things that we can, that we find out, this is a definition that I love about leadership, is that a good leader takes people where they want to go. And a great leader takes people where they don't want to go, but really ought to be. So the question is tonight, where are you going? How are you going to get there? And what will be your leadership legacy? Madam Chair, I'm hoping there might be some questions that we can deal with on a one-to-one basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross, for an extraordinary presentation. If there are any questions, would you please send them in chat and I can call them out to Ross at this point. What an extraordinary presentation. So much to learn from you, Ross. Are there any questions from Rad? Bonnie, do you have a question?
Oh, Ayano, I was just trying to think how I wanted to frame a question and what question specifically.
Oh dear, when you hear Bonnie do that, you know you're in trouble. Look out, here it's coming. Go for it, kid.
So Ross and I know each other for 16 years. And Ross,
Let's be honest. Bonnie was the lady who managed my campaign to be elected to the board of directors and did so not only beautifully, but successfully. Thank you again, Bonnie.
well, I had a very delightful and candidate who I don't want to say was a shoo-in, but it was a delight to work with Ross and Margaret to get him elected to the board. So I've been thinking about, so I'm currently a district director in the United States, and it's been an interesting challenge this year for me. It took me a while to think about my vision, and I do have a district vision. I've been trying to think through how to inspire the team because I know that it's important to do that. I also need I also have been thinking about how to demonstrate. So my vision is that my district will be a vibrant community of enthusiastic, energetic Toastmasters who are dedicated to helping themselves and others achieve their highest communication and leadership potential. And I'm trying to think, how do you measure goals that would be associated for documenting that we have achieved that vision? I don't know if that's a question you want to answer, Ross.
Well, I think the answer is fairly straightforward, simplistic though it may seem, and that is the goals that are set for us as district leaders are out there and identified by Toastmasters International as to, are you going to have a president's distinguished district or a president's or a distinguished district or select distinguished, that whatever that is. These are pretty solid goals, which, and I think for me anyway, this is the important part, that it will result from the vision that you have just very beautifully expressed, in my opinion. That's nicely done, because if you do that, that's what happens. You do get the number of new clubs. You do get the number of new members that are coming, because members don't join clubs that are a little full, and who was it that said not too long ago that members don't join districts, they only join clubs. So we have to look at that one as well. That's an interesting one when I heard it. Can't remember who said that, but it was a good one. But if you have that overall vision, it'll happen. Sometimes it'll happen in spite of you, or in spite of some of the team, right? But it'll go forward. I mean, we had an interesting trio. The year District 60, when I was district governor, we had an interesting trio that we changed two of the trio and in the midterm, and we still made select distinguished. And part of that was because of a past district governor, Randy Jacobs. I was her program quality, well, I was her club growth director, and she was my club growth director for the last half of the year. So we kind of switched roles. But as a consequence, I had a club growth director who knew exactly what had to be done. And she did it. She was making them up, and she was bringing new clubs on. And what did I do? I helped her. I was there out helping. We were building new clubs together. And that works because we had a goal that wasn't going to settle for just maybe 2 or 3 clubs started in the last half of the year. We needed 10. We got 10. And that was an exciting part. And as I'll say it again, we had fun doing it. If you ain't having fun, you're not doing it right. Who was it that said that? Anybody?
Ralph Smedley.
No.
Ralph Smedley.
Did somebody say Ralph Cramden?
No. Ralph Smedley.
I'm not hearing that.
Ralph Smedley.
No, it wasn't Ralph Smedley.
Rob said Ralph Smedley.
No, it wasn't Ralph Smedley. It was the first female member of Toastmasters International who became the first female international president. And I can't remember.
Johnson.
Helen
Yeah.
Blanchard.
Helen Blanchard, thank you.
Oh.
Right? She's the one that came up with that one. And it's so true. If you ain't having fun, you're not doing it right. And the thing is that when you are having fun, when you're getting together, I remember some of the sessions that we've had, with just, when you've got the trio right in there, it's just a trio, and you're bouncing ideas off each other. You become each other's mentors almost, if you're doing it right and if you're all on the same page and working towards that same goal of making sure that things are as great as they possibly can be for the members. And at the same time, you're bringing in as many new members as you can. And you're allowing and helping the educational process to work and bring that through as well. It's great fun. Anybody else?
We have another question, and this is from Elsie LeBlanc. She says, Ross, I wonder if you have learned about leadership through trial and error, or was it a combination of that plus following courses and workshops?
No, I knew it instinctively right from the word go. I mean, babe, that's a nice way of saying, how many times did you actually screw up, Mackay? A lot more than I got it right, I'll tell you that. Now, the truth is, I did go to a lot of courses. I did a lot of that. I learned, there were no leaderships. So it was a self-development course that I went to. It's not sorry, the number of times I went to and the number of wonderful courses and personal development courses that there were there. And that's where I learned it. It wasn't a formal leadership courses, although I was at a few of them, more than a few. But I think it was, who are you, Mackay? And can you become a better person? Of course, that was easy because I knew where I started. So it was one of these things that you start to recognize as a better person, can you become even better? And more importantly, and this is what happens to all of you who have been around Toastmasters for years, the emphasis changes from how much better am I going to get out of this to how much better can I help you become out of this? And can I promote something that will help you become a better person, become a better leader, become a better speaker, become a better evaluator, become much more able to handle table topics just in the drop of a hat, table topics that you just never thought about. How creative can I help you become if you have no idea what the word of the table topic is, or what it means? Can you get that ability to bring that into focus? And I think that's what it came from. I think I participated and started in lifelong learning from, I would say, roughly about the age of 30. I read a little book called Think and Grow Rich, and it took off from there, by Napoleon Hill. And there's so many others that I have learned from. I have a bookshelf here that's full of all personal development books that I've heard and listened to. So it's not just about Toastmasters. Toastmasters gives us a little glimpse of life, doesn't it? It's a microcosm of what life is like, and can we improve that? And as I said before, more importantly, can we help other people get it? Because so many people don't. The sad part is, I watched the statistics. What is it? The average life of a Toastmaster is about 2 years, 2.5 years. And I go, what we're missing the opportunity to help these folks a lot more. Now, that doesn't mean to say they're not already helped within that 2 years. I mean, I don't know a lot of people who have just been dynamite in terms of improving their presentation skills, who come in and just suck all the information out of the program that they can possibly get and improve themselves tremendously in a fairly short years. And once they get that, that's their goal satisfied. So they move on to something else, whatever is maybe of more importance to them. Because remember, your family and your business comes first, and Toastmasters comes third. Oh, maybe even fourth. I don't know where else you're going to go.
Thank you for that, Ross. We have a question from Tony Nelson, and I will request Tony to ask that sensitive question himself. Tony?
Ross, do you have any suggestions on how one handles difficult people with respect?
How one handles difficult people. A 2x4 frequently helps. But if that doesn't work, it depends where the difficulty is coming from, Tony, as you well know. Is it a lack of understanding? Do I really not get it? Or is it just somebody who has their own agenda and who comes into a club or a district leadership team with their own agenda or with an ego that we're never going to be able to satisfy? And in fact, he or she himself or herself are never going to be able to satisfy either. There are some that just won't work. I keep thinking of one particular individual who has the ability to be really a good Toastmaster and a good individual, but every time he wants to be the second in command of the district of the club. The club president and the VP of Education, thank you, is the VP of Education. And we had a little discussion at one point. And I mentioned a discussion that had taken place at an international board meeting where we had talked about taking some of the work from the VP Education and specifically the mentoring aspect of the job and giving it to the immediate past president, something that was actually discussed at some length. Simply because the first is overworked, the latter is underutilized. So we had a discussion about that. The next thing I know, he's complaining that I'm doing his job for him. Right? Now, all I did was mention the possibility, right? And then I did something else about a few weeks later and said, you are definitely doing my job, wanting to do my job for you. And if you're going to do that, I'm going to quit. Guess what my reaction was? We're going to miss you. And we did. We missed them, right? And the problem is he didn't understand that no one person runs a Toastmasters club. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your name is. I don't care whether your ego is so big and your skills are so huge. No one person runs a Toastmasters club. It doesn't work that way. It's a team working together. And if the team isn't able to do it, then the club itself is going to have trouble. Now, every club has ups and downs, right? My club has been around for over 40 years. Do they do everything right? No. Have they done everything right every year in the last 40 plus years? No. But they have helped hundreds, maybe over 1,000 people in the community improve the communication skills. And that's a big deal. But no one person runs the club, ever. And incidentally, no one person runs a district, ever. But there is one person who's in charge, who's given the job of district director, and they're the ones that has to enlist the help of the others. And if the others won't help, there's not a lot that can be done. And that's sad, because there's so much that can be done. Alone, we do so little. Together, we can do so much.
Thank you for that, Ross. We have another question, and this is from Hitesh Parmar. He says, as a leader, how do you tackle difficult people and awkward club-related situations?
Give me that again.
As a leader, how does one tackle difficult people and awkward club-related situations?
There is no one cure for that, because it's going to be a little different for everybody you get. In a previous club I had, there was one person who just thought from the time he started with the club, he felt it necessary to criticize everything the club does, and that was a little challenging. As it happened, I worked very hard. The first major conflict that was going on, we worked hard trying to come up with something, never did. So we let it go. And then the next time he came up with something else, and my response was, look, that's the way we do it around here. Why don't you hang on and just hang around for a little while and see if you can get accustomed to it and see if it starts to sit better with you. Well, never heard from him again in a critical way. He's still a member of that club, right? So sometimes you just need somebody to say, look, this is the way we do it, right? Do we do things exactly by the book? No. Should we? No. Because people don't like working by the book. And that's one thing that we are a little lacking on at the moment. One of the challenges that we're having in Toastmasters generally is the district leadership manual that tells the program quality director and the club growth director exactly what their responsibilities are. Unfortunately, it misses one vital piece of information. And that piece of information is work with the district director, not against him or her. That's the core, it's cooperation. The district director, if you read the district director's piece, by the way, the district director is told to support and work with the other two, but the other two aren't told to work with him or her. Kind of interesting. We had some discussions with about that on the ILC quite recently. So it's that's one of the challenges that I hope that helps.
It does very much. Thank you very much, Ross. We are at that moment when we are now at the end of the seminar. We would like to thank you for your time, and I would like to end the session and thank everyone for coming out with the words of our very own First Lady International President, Helen Blanchard. If you love Toastmasters, you will never leave Toastmasters if you can get all that you can get out of Toastmasters. But I'm going to turn that around and challenge everyone to say, you will never leave Toastmasters if you can give to Toastmasters all that you can give to Toastmasters. Thank you very much, Ross, for your time today. We appreciate you taking this time and energy, and we all look forward to working with one another. Please give Ross a round of applause.